Well, hello everyone. Have you missed us? Welcome to episode 58 of Studio 8.1 with me, Jarvis Todd, publisher of Telemedia Magazine, Telemedia News, all things telemedia, and my old friend over there, Paul Skeldon, who is the wordsmith, the editor, has been doing this for well over 20 years now. What he doesn't know about telemedia isn't worth knowing, and that is why every couple of weeks we get together and we tell you about some of the hottest stories that have come across our desks, and we have a little bit of a deeper dive into what all those content-hungry consumers are buying on their phones primarily, how those services are being marketed, and probably more importantly, how they're actually getting paid for. So hello, Paul. Have you had a great
Hello, mate.
summer?
Yes, it's been glorious.
I'm
Glorious.
I'm still dressed for summer. You've obviously given in and brought the
Yeah, it's cold. It's cold today
it's
in my
chilly.
neck of the woods.
It is
It's
chilly.
yeah, but yeah, I admire you. I admire you continuing with the summer stuff, which we
Well,
have to
there you
do
go.
until
I'll,
after
I'll
Marbella,
explain.
obviously.
I'll explain why I'm still in summer mode a little bit later on, with some exciting news about some upcoming World Telemedia events, or a brand new World Telemedia event that's going to be launched in the May of 2025. But more about that later. Let me tell you a little bit about what we're going to be covering. We're kicking off with a story about how RCS and DCB are coming together in Germany. That is a great tale, and we're really looking forward to telling you a little bit more about that. We're then going to be talking about fantastic acronym alert, everyone. The rise of alt.payments, or alternative payment mechanisms, APMs, the rise of all that stuff worldwide. And then we're going to be talking about voice and SMS fraud, and how bizarrely somebody seems to think it's falling. And but I'm going to have to dive a little bit deeper into that, because that don't sound right to me. And then we're going to finish it all off with a quick update on World Telemedia Marbella, which is our annual get together, or yes, our annual European get together, I should say,
Ooh.
which is coming up on the 6th to the 8th of October in Marbella. It is selling like the tickets are selling like hotcakes. I don't know if that translates. And we're on target to see another record turnout in Marbella in about a month's time. So if you haven't signed up yet, make sure you're going to be there. And if you're still undecided, hopefully we can talk about a couple of key reasons why you should be there. So, Paul, without further ado,
Oh, I've missed it. I've missed
let's
that over the
crack
summer.
on. So as I said earlier, this was the sort of standout story of the week, and probably even the standout story of the month, if not the summer, which is Vodafone Germany, who are, I think, fair to say, one of the most progressive MNOs in Europe, certainly based on this particular tale. And they've launched the world's first RCS-based transport ticketing solution, along with, I'm very pleased to say, our dear friends Democo Payments, who are in fact a sponsor of World Telemedia, and Horizon, who are also an exhibitor and sponsor of World Telemedia. So if that doesn't endorse World Telemedia, I don't know what does. The story goes along the lines of with RCS, and we've talked about RCS continually, and I still haven't received one on my phone yet. But that could be
I
something
was
to.
going to ask you if you had.
Yeah,
I
well, I
did
did check
wonder.
earlier, and I'm wondering now whether it might be something to do with my settings. But anyway, I digress. I'm not convinced I've received one yet, but it might be something in the background. But with RCS poised to get an Apple-shaped boost later this month, so I presume you mean by that that Apple will be supporting RCS.
Will be in iOS 18, which will be available to download, I believe, at the end of this
Right.
month.
Oh, it'll be on the download.
Yeah, it's the update of the operating system. It's built
Okay,
into that.
okay. So along with that, and Germany rapidly embracing DCB, these three giants of telecoms, messaging, and payments join forces to offer a unique ticketing solution. So I mean, this ticks every box, doesn't it? It's a beautiful kind of telemedia partnership. It's new messaging tech. It's driving DCB across a progressive and big European market, alongside a supportive and proactive MNO. I mean, what's not to like about this?
Absolutely. And like you say, I mean, what a ringing endorsement of the World Telemedia show because like these people are all there and have long been supporters of it. So
Including
yes,
Including Vodacom, actually, in this
it,
case. But so yeah, we've got
yeah,
the Holy Trinity.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it was the standout story of the summer, because it is such a sort of great confluence of things we've talked about for many months. Particularly, it cements that role that carrier billing has, particularly now in the German market. We've done a lot of stuff and talked on our various podcasts about how carrier billing's been really pushed in Germany as a sort of proper sort of payment mechanism. It's got a brand name. It's sort of advertised everywhere. They're really going for it. In a podcast I did over the summer while you were out and about, which is on my own, I talked about how Democo, who were involved in this type, have worked with Deutsche Telekom to add carrier billing to Deutsche Telekom's online store. So it's being used there. It's going to be used there for purchase of some physical goods as well, which is one to watch. So this sort of really builds on that and this idea that Germany has become a real hotbed for carrier billing. The interesting part is that it involves RCS, which is, as we've talked about, the messaging service that might hopefully replace SMS down the line. Apple, in building it into iOS 18, which is available later this month, will hopefully sort of make that kind of now a mass market thing. And I hope push it more into being used. You, as you say, we've talked about this for months, and on your phone is RCS compatible, but you don't seem to receive them unless you're receiving them and don't know, or it might be your settings, but that's probably for another podcast. But yeah, so this story really ticks all those boxes, and it's really, really interesting that they pulled all these things together, rolled out this great service that should be great. Now, you said at the top of our podcast that what I don't know about telemedia is not worth knowing. One thing I don't know, and I have been trying for the past fortnight to find out precisely how, is I don't know how this works.
Okay.
Because
It
I
just
was
works.
well, I was reading. I think this is great. This is really exciting. It's RCS. It's DCB. It's a mainstream Western market. This is fantastic, and it is. But then thought, how does it work? And I can't find any details anywhere about how it actually works. What I think happens is that because it's described the sort of process of getting a ticket, but there's a sort of cloudy bit that's not sort of no details of. So you scan your QR code at the bus stop, select carrier billing, or select the fare you want to pay, select carrier billing, bosh, you get your bus ticket on your phone. Now, I think it uses the RCS messaging platform run by Horizon in this case, to transfer that information and to deliver to your phone the bus ticket, I think. But it's not clear, and I've looked on, I've delved deeply into Horizon's website, Vodafone Germany's website, Democo's website, the tech show at which they launched this in Germany's website, though most of that was in German, so it was a challenge. So yeah, so if anyone listening, watching, could let us know exactly how it works, that would be great. But it works, and that's the cool thing about it. I
Well,
think what it really,
that's the most important thing for the consumer, of course, because
well, quite, they don't,
you
yeah,
can't be learning to do stuff. It has to be very
no,
intuitive, and you'd assume, like you say, that from the
yeah,
user's point of view, QR code, pay
yeah,
carrier billing, there's my ticket. That's the most. But for
yeah,
us,
they
yeah,
don't care like how it's done, which did bring me to sort of think, well, maybe this is why you haven't received any RCSs, because you don't know that you've received them.
yeah.
But again, that's something to delve into. So I'm hoping we will find out. There's a carrier billing event next week in Amsterdam. I'm hoping to collar someone there who can possibly explain the nuts and bolts of how it works. But it does illustrate how RCS, because one of the selling points of RCS was that it could be transactional. So you could put out rich, lovely looking marketing messages via mobile to people, and they could, in theory, buy or sign up for and pay for things that are advertised in that purely by clicking on it and using carrier billing. Or alternative payments, but carrier billing is one of the things. And this, I was surprised when this press release about this, the announcement of this arrived, because you think, blimey, they've done it already. Because I thought, oh, this will happen, a year, 2 years hence, but no, it's here. So apart from the sort of minutiae of how it actually uses RCS, this is, a really cool and interesting development and a real step forward, I think.
I agree. I agree. It's a nice way to start the autumn season.
Yeah.
For those that don't know, and again, we have stated this many times that, time and time again, when you see a supportive mobile network operator at the top of the tree, great things can happen in the telemedia sector. And this is all part of Vodafone's Uplift project, which I have to say, I mean, I wasn't super aware of. But this seems to be part of a kind of initiative where they are creating future-orientated solutions that deliver tangible value and sustainability with partners like Horizon in this case and Democo. And I think that that type of strategic approach from an MNO is really the key to success. And I really hope that we start seeing a lot more of that. I believe, given that we're talking about emerging markets, well, we will be a little bit later on. I think that this sort of approach in MENA, operators in that region is a little bit more along the lines that we're seeing here with Vodafone. And I suspect that that's why we'll start to see quite a lot of innovation coming from those areas. Perhaps even maybe not ahead of Germany, but certainly ahead of some of the other European countries, like the UK, for example. So yeah, I thought it was all really good news. And for anyone that is interested in hearing about the how it actually works, I know that Paul's in conversation with our friends at Horizon and Democo. As he said, they'll certainly, all three of them will be represented in Marbella, if not before. So we will be covering this in our editorial pages in more detail over the next couple of months. So keep an eye out for that. Right, well, let's move on. And it's nice to kick off with some some positive vibes. We prefer to look at big positive figures than negative stuff in the telemedia world. It is our job to boost the industry after all. And the second story reads, global e-commerce market is poised to reach 11.4 trillion by 2029. We'll be retired by then, mate. And that is being driven by another ridiculous acronym, APM. That is alternative payment methods, because that's far too difficult to say. This is some research that's come out from our dear friends at Juniper. First time they've got a mention after the summer. And there's a link to the Global E-commerce Payments Market 2024 to 2029 report. And there's a link to that on this podcast on our website. And there's also a link to that on Paul's editorial piece on telemediaonline.co.uk. And the headline stats are that the e-commerce market is set to grow by 63% in the next 5 years. And it's all thanks to alternative payments in developing markets, as I just mentioned. The author is a lady called Laureen Carter, and she said that APM transaction volumes are leapfrogging cards in emerging markets as merchants look to attract new users and geographies. So, I mean, I suppose in terms of, we talk about the more ways that you can offer, a range of payment mechanisms at the checkout, the better chance you've got of keeping that customer. Basket abandonment goes down. And obviously in some of those emerging markets where, banking and credit cards in particular, or payment cards, are not so prolific, it's understandable, I suppose, that any kind of digital merchant would be following this kind of strategy. And so, not super surprising. What was it that sort of, sparked your interest on this one?
Well, I think
it's another big old figure.
Well, I think it's a big old number. It's a very rapid bit of growth. But the thing that I think is interesting about it is twofold. Firstly, that much of this growth is going to come from e-commerce exploding in developing and evolving markets outside of the West. E-commerce sort of in the developed world is pretty established. It's probably at sort of saturation point. It's unlikely to grow much more, I wouldn't have thought. I mean, maybe some individual verticals have got some room for growth there, but it's sort of like looking at kind of holistically at e-commerce. It's sort of largely sort of stable in terms of the amount of people using it. Revenues go up, and that's because the price of things rises. It's just inflation. So a lot of this growth that's going to come is going to come from these emerging markets. And I think that's a huge opportunity for all the technology people involved in e-commerce are going to start to focus on those markets because that's where the growth is. The second thing that's really interesting is off the back of that is that it's going to be driven by alternative payments. Now, the author, as you say, does say about it leapfrogging card payments in these evolving and developing markets. Again, that's not a surprise. They don't have cards. A lot of people there don't have bank accounts. It's a different world, but they all want to do e-commerce. So there's going to be different ways of doing it. And the thing that makes this really interesting, I think, is it suddenly becomes where sort of any form of direct payment or digitized wallet or cash into ways of spending on your phone, carrier billing, all those things suddenly become much more important because rather than being as they are now in say, the MENA region, you use carrier billing to pay for value-added services, stuff, entertainment, edutainment, that kind of stuff, which is a huge and excellent market. This is a whole other ball game if they can get into that side of e-commerce, of actually buying stuff. And I think sort of going back to the stuff about carrier billing in Germany, particularly the things that Democo have done with Deutsche Telekom and this payment agent model, where it's starting to open up carrier billing to be used to buy physical goods. And that model can be replicated elsewhere. And I think tying the two things together, you've got this huge e-commerce opportunity. It's a huge opportunity for carrier billing and any other kind of sort of non-bank based alternative payment mechanism, or APM, as they have handily abbreviated it. So it stood out to me as being like a happy, what a glorious story. I think in many ways you look at it and go, yeah, of course it's going to be huge. E-commerce is massive in the future, but I think there are some interesting subtexts to it about how people in these developing markets are going to pay. And I do wonder whether as services get developed there that are really easy to use, that can leverage alternative payments to do e-commerce, whether that starts to come back to be seen here. Because a lot of the things you're seeing developing in Germany are a kind of westernized version of things that have already been used in MENA. And this renewed focus on carrier billing in sort of developed markets, especially Germany, is really interesting. So I think it's an excellent evolution of e-commerce and payments that's only going to sort of benefit the people in right across the telemedia spectrum because it will impact VAS as well as e-commerce.
Well, I agree, and if anyone out there needed any convincing that World Telemedia was indeed the only real event that focuses on how payments, a range of payments, not just DCB, fit together with marketing strategies and techniques and the content and value-added services that people are actually buying using that. And how you can maximize those conversions. Just pick out a couple of highlights from the upcoming conference. We've got one of our newest sponsors, a company called Solaris, and you should check them out. And indeed, they're sort of headlining one of the payment sessions, which is called Smart Payments, Smart Business, and that's all about embracing credit cards and mobile wallets.
Actually,
fits right,
that's
right
a good
alongside.
point.
Yeah.
I was going to say that actually. Sorry to interrupt, but just briefly, it is that also there's this idea that it won't just be one form of payment. So you might be using carrier billing to do one thing, particularly to onboard people, but you might want to also have credit card as that takes off, particularly as more people become banked in other markets, or you want to exploit new markets. You need to add different ways of paying. So I think, yes, that this whole idea of orchestrated payments where there's lots of different options is also going to be part of what drives this sort of the lucrative side of e-commerce for everyone involved. So yeah, if you talk to any of the sort of billing people, dynamic mobile billing, people like that, it's not about carrier billing. It's about this whole spectrum of payments. Carrier billing being part of it. It's like where you can offer as much as possible and how to use those in different ways depending on what the customer actually wants at the time.
Yeah, no, 100%. And also just picking up on what people can expect in or from the Telemedia event. There's also a headline session which is being hosted by World Play, which is bringing the African market into the spotlight, which obviously, has been of interest for a long time. And I mean, it's probably a bit unfair to call these emerging markets now, really, but
Yeah, I try and call them
developing is probably better.
yeah, evolving, I think, because they
Yeah,
are sort of
yeah.
yeah, it's that yeah, it's hard to find. You're right.
And that's a great example of what you just said in that there's it. I think one of the interesting things that Jackie Jones said to me was, I think the original title for the session was "Africa is not a country." And it's really telling, right? Because the earlier on there was mentioned about the sort of the idiosyncrasies of various geographies, and understanding what's going to work over here and what's going to work over there, and all of which is vital to be able to maximize those conversions and be truly global. And that's going to be something which I think a lot of people are going to be talking about and learning about in Marbella. And I suppose also this is probably a good enough time, Paul, to make the big announcement because
I think so.
you've talked about evolving markets and exciting markets, and no more exciting region than MENA, I would say, probably. And the reason that I've got probably skin cancer developing on my balding head. Uh, sorry, just nobody wants to hear
You're
about that.
really selling this.
Yes, it's because I've spent no less than 3 weeks on 3 different occasions since we found out that Telecom World Middle East was not going to happen in May next year. There was a big show-shaped gap that we felt needed to be filled. And so we have, in fact, put ourselves through a moderate amount of discomfort, I'd say. I was in Dubai on the second occasion. It was 45 degrees, feels like 62 at one point, and we're working very hard to find a top-notch venue for the very first ever World Telemedia Dubai event, which will be all about driving value-added services, content sales, billing, payments, and messaging into the MENA region, and supporting, absolutely focusing on developing business in that area. And we've already had a huge amount of support from those that have been told. And we're really looking forward to launching that show at the Marriott Hotel, Palm Jumeirah, on the 11th, 12th, and 13th of May, 2025. So you better pack your Speedos, mate, because we're heading
Already
to the
wearing
Middle
them.
East. It's already got them on. So there'll be more about that at the show. Obviously, the next 2 or 3 weeks we'll be focusing on Marbella and getting that one sorted. But as soon as that's over, we'll really sort of start to push out and reach out to the industry, to obviously particularly local players who we want to hear from them. We want to have good representation from people right the way across that region. We don't want to fill it full of Europeans telling everybody how things should be done. So looking forward to hearing from the big local players, and I suspect that judging by the early sort of reactions, that is already looking like a really brilliant event, and we're looking forward to putting that together. So there you go, Paul. That's the big announcement.
Excellent. That sounds what a brilliant time. Yeah, brilliant. I mean, it's brilliant timing. Of course, that's why you're doing it. And absolutely the hot spot to be in. And
Really
yeah,
is.
off the back of this sort of these kind of news stories that we're talking about, particularly sort of one about e-commerce. Yeah, right on the money. Really
Yeah.
good. Yeah, it'd be really interesting.
And also, early sort of mid-May, it'll be warm, but it won't be horrific. So we've also done some research on making sure that our delegates are going to be as comfy as possible. So yeah, well, more about that later. So let's move on to the third story, and I have some problems with this one, mate. As we regularly talk about fraud, anti-fraud, and that underpins a big part of the World Telemedia world. As we've said before, we're very lucky in that we've got some excellent businesses out there that support service providers and aggregators and operators and try to fight the good fight when it comes to fraudsters. But it is a fact of life in our industry. So I was a bit surprised to read, and I should think a few people out there might be a bit surprised to hear, The guys from Kaleido Intelligence put out a research paper just recently called Mobile Network Fraud and Security 24 Outlook. And they conclude that voice and SMS fraud is actually going to fall below $20 billion as fraudsters target other channels. The early point on this is that improving 5G security sees fraudsters shifting to newer channels as traditional fraud loses. Additional fraud losses drop by more than 30% in 3 years. Now, I like who's not happy about hearing that fraud is dropping by 30%. But the caveat to that is that they're then saying that fraudsters are actually going to focus on newer forms of fraud. Now, and this is the question I've got here is what bit of the fraud, voice, I suppose they're focusing on voice and SMS, I guess. And they're saying, well, obviously the fraud is going across to where people there are attacks on APIs and where the fraudsters kind of imitate subscribers and false identities. And of course, that's really the kind of key fraud, isn't it, in our area? And when we talked about Avena putting out a fantastic video explanation of how the fraudsters can kind of create false identities and start subscribing on the behalf of users without them knowing about it. So in our world, that what Kaleido is suggesting the fraudsters are moving to has actually happened quite a long time ago, and it's probably so I'm a little bit unsure about what the benefit of this research is really.
Well, I think it's sort of it's interesting. I pulled this one out because I think it's interesting because I think it shows that the work that people like Avena have done on sort of basic voice and SMS fraud some years ago is paying off, and the crims are moving elsewhere with it. So I think it's interesting. I mean, let's not forget that you read the figures, it's going to fall below $20 billion. I mean, it's still going to be $17 billion. That's a lot of dollars. So it's still a lucrative fraud channel, voice and SMS. So I think if you look at it the other way round, it's great that it's declined, but it's declining and it's set to decline by 2028. I think their figures run to. But it's still, it's still a huge opportunity for fraudsters. So there's still a huge market for that kind of fraud protection. But yeah, security on 5G networks makes it a little bit better. I think sort of the fact that people are shifting to other channels is also just shifting the fraud. So a lot of that sort of money that's being saved off of voice and SMS fraud is just appearing elsewhere. There's a handy table in the news story that goes with this, which the link will appear in the bottom of this. That shows that things like sort of subscriber fraud is still growing. Newer kinds of fraud around new channels are forming, and new ways of doing it. Like you say, sort of subscriber fraud subscriber fraud's growing. AI fueled identity fraud and pretending to be someone you're not and being called by people who pretend to be someone they're not and all that kind of thing. It is all still growing. And I think it's, when I talked to Avena in our Telemedia 8.1 event in Barcelona back in February, they were saying that yes, we sort of kind of are winning the battle, but really, you never win. And as fast as you sort of plug one hole, a fraud hole is elsewhere. And it's these companies, Avena, MCP, all those sorts of people really do constantly evolve to make this better. But there's always going to be fraud. So yes, voice and SMS fraud predicted by our friends at Kaleido to drop a bit. It's still massive, but it's just sort of coming out elsewhere. And I think there'll always be fraud around digital services. It's not just telemedia. It's not just carrier billing and subscription fraud. It's everywhere. I mean, like all retailers and all e-commerce things are just like sort of beset with fraud. I mean, your email inbox, like mine, is probably full of fraud-based emails, and they're getting more and more sophisticated. And you know, it's only a matter of time before you or me or any of our team inadvertently like make a Charlie of ourselves and click on one, because it's just impossible in some instances to not know. So I think so fraud isn't falling. The fight goes on. All our friends who work in that side of the business have done an amazing job, which is what this story really is testament to, is that fraud hasn't sort of exponentially grown. It is in some channels dropping off, but it's just moving to other places. So be alert, everyone.
Yeah, well, you make a good point. I mean, if you think about how many years our team's been together, most of us are approaching 60. Some of us have even gone through that milestone,
But
which
that's
means
not
that
me, listeners. That's
well,
not
I
me.
don't think it's worth mentioning who that might be. But the fact of the matter is we are becoming ever more vulnerable
Yeah,
just by virtue of the fact that we are getting very old. And
yeah,
it will
true.
probably only be a matter of time. It's interesting actually, again, going back to World Telemedia and the forthcoming conference session, which obviously we hope is always a really good reflection on not only the kinds of things that we talk about, but the key strategic issues that everybody in the sector needs to be aware of. And we only have 2 days, we can't cover everything, but I think it's already coming together in quite an interesting way. And we've talked about one of the sort of overriding themes seems to be that in terms of customer acquisition, there's been some disruption going on recently in the last 12 months with regards to sort of what you can do with Google and what you can't do with Google. So everyone's talking about user acquisition, and consequently, we see in our conference that a company called SMS is coming to the rescue, and they're covering a couple of things. One is SMS conversions, but looking at SMS as a marketing route. Again, and the same company is then also talking about AI phone calls in terms of voice marketing, which we also touched on before. Well, now what that suggests is that if the traditional Facebook, Google type of which has been very successful and everyone's been jumping on that and focusing on that, and that's been a big contributor to increased volumes of sales and acquisition. If that is now problematic, then naturally, as a marketing company, you're going to have to turn to other routes and other channels. And voice is there, AI is helping that, and so is SMS. So if you then flip that back to the story that you've just seen, that if all of a sudden you start to see an increase in voice traffic and SMS because it now becomes a more effective marketing channel, or a marketing channel that's being focused on, so the traffic volumes go up, you may well find that story gets reversed pretty quickly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, and the process will keep seesawing.
Flip flopping.
Yeah.
So I mean, again, anyone. I think looking at the some of the things that people want to talk about. Clearly, customer acquisition is the hot topic, given that there's been this disruption. And I'll just run through a couple of sessions Sellout for you. We're going to be talking about, is the mobile user acquisition model broken? We're going to be revisiting and updating the Mesh Ads session, which was talking about marketing MVAS services and how you can compete in a crowded market. And that will also feature Google. So it'd be interesting to hear what they've got to say about recent developments. As I said, there's going to be some talk about SMS and how to convert SMS traffic and integrate it into your marketing strategies. We're also going to be looking at this sort of new agency model, which is being championed by our dear friends at Sam Media. I should also say thank you to the Mobile Ecosystem Forum, who, as Paul mentioned earlier, are running the DCB. It's DCB Forum, right? Or Summit. DCB Summit in Amsterdam next week on the 16th and 17th, or 18th, or the 17th and 18th of September. So if anyone's going to be there, I'm sure you'll see Paul and I there as well. We'll be in the corner with hangovers probably. And the MEF are doing their own session right at the top of the event, which is a result of the operator survey that they're carrying out as we speak, and it's sort of going to illustrate to our market what it is that's really important to the operators, and that will obviously goes back to what we were saying earlier about, an engaged MNO doesn't half help. So it is very important for our industry to be mindful of the sweet spots, if you like, in terms of getting MNOs to be as supportive as possible. There's some other great sessions from AD Group, which are focusing on technology, again, with a sort of marketing spin. There's also going to be a session by Mobibox, enabling DCP payments and scaling compliant user acquisition. Again, the theme of user acquisition comes up right there. And I mentioned earlier on the Solaris session, which is looking at that sort of broader range of or how to embrace a broader range of payment mechanisms, including credit cards and mobile wallets, alongside all the other good stuff that we know works, like DCB. So far, it's shaping up to be an excellent conference. We're covering, I think, pretty much all our bases within the limited amount of time that we have. But I suppose now we've got another show in May, we can extend, and what we don't cover in Marbella, we'll certainly make sure we cover in Dubai. That, I think, my old friend, just about is that.
Which is excellent timing, because the man repairing my driveway outside my window here has just fired up his big cutting machine.
Excellent.
So,
okay.
So I think that is a great time to draw a line under it. It sounds like the theme of the show is going to be user acquisition, but that's
seems that way.
Very timely.
Okay, well, listen, thank you very much for your time. Thanks everybody for tuning in. And if you're not tuning in, you're watching it on a record, do share it. Let everyone know that we're here every couple of weeks. I guess we're going to squeeze one of these in just before World Telemedia, so we'll bring you an update on where we're at.
I think we got at least one more, if not two.
And we can also report back from our Amsterdam trip, assuming that we remember any of it.
Yes.
So I will see you next week, mate. Until then, thank you
very
much.
Indeed. Yep.
Cheerio, everyone.